Hey guys, it's Jay. This week on the blog I want to answer a question that I've been getting since this whole thing began, but that really it's only the last few weeks I feel I can adequately answer. And that is, does it cost more to eat healthy? This is a complicated question, and when my friend Steph asked it on the Facebook page this week, there were soon, about a dozen other comments of people agreeing with her, of saying absolutely it does, talk about that, you must be spending an arm and a leg. Now, I gotta say, I didn't want to just base this on my own experience and what I'm buying in the grocery store. As you know, even just watching, the video a few weeks back, 2 weeks ago maybe, I showed you what I bought in the grocery store. Some of those items have changed already. You find alternatives, your habits change. You find new products, you find new ways of using them. And I'm really on a quest now to simplify my life in as many ways as I can. I had a pretty full life before. I found it hard to find a minute in my day, not just because I had no energy from being so overweight, but also just because I lead a pretty busy life as it is. I think it would wear most people out. So then you add into that, almost 10 hours a week at the gym. That time had to come from somewhere. You add into that 5 or 6 hours in the kitchen every week now, prepping for the week ahead that I never used to spend before. I've had to find 15 or 16 new hours in my week, and this has been a real test of time management for me. So in a way to handle that, I'm trying to simplify my life in as many ways as possible. And one of those is just my whole relationship, not just with food and eating it, but with bringing food into the house. I have to not be going to the grocery store, 3 times a week. I need to come up with a plan. And that was an easy process for me post-op, because a big part of taking responsibility for the food that you eat is working off of a meal plan. So I have a spreadsheet on my computer, like a geek that I am. I fill it out every week. I know what I'm having for breakfast, dinner, and supper a full week in advance. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't trust myself to make the right choice in the moment. If I screwed up my day, I fell off my time schedule or whatever, I don't want my hunger deciding what gets put into me. I want to know that I made a balanced meal, not just a meal, but a balanced day. I want to know that I'm meeting the nutritional requirements of every meal, that that's all adding up to the best nutritional day I could possibly have, that I'm doing all of that and keeping it, around the calorie count that I'm around with the lap band. And that in quantity matters too, right? Portion control, we've talked about a lot. A cup of food for me at every meal. So in order to make all of that happen, I have to operate off of a meal plan. But that's had a great side effect. I know now on Saturday, when I make my meal plan for the week, for starting on the coming Monday, when I sit down on Saturday and make that, I know every ingredient and every item that I need in this house to get through the next week. And then I know what of that list is already in the house, so that produces a shopping list. And sometimes I'll look at that and say, no, you've been a little too extravagant. You picked some stuff that all costs a little too much and it's not happening this week. So I know there are some things that I make that just, that cost too much. I'd eat, I try to eat chicken every day. If I ate a chicken breast every day, that would be fantastic. I find that too pricey. There are other pieces of chicken that are just as good if you learn how to cook them the right way and if you take the time, right? Slow cooker will turn the worst cut of meat into the best tasting meal, but you got to be organized. You got to find the time to do it. You got to prepare for that stuff. So making those choices first, working off a meal plan and getting a shopping list, I'm telling you, I don't care if you're trying to eat healthy or you're just trying to eat smart or you're just trying to save time. That is a huge, huge help. Don't sit down with the flyers and make your grocery list. Sit down with a blank sheet of paper, plan out your week, and then seek out those items you need. If there's something in the flyer that you want to stock up on, then go ahead and do it. That'll save money in the long run. But there's a science behind advertising and what goes on sale, right? So, a grocery store puts hamburger on sale, but they put hamburger buns. This is a bad example, but they make those connections. You buy one item, you're more likely to buy these other items. They put this item on sale and all of these other items are raised in price or not put on sale. So they're controlling your choices by putting on sale what they put on sale, by making you go for that item. So don't give them that control. Hold that yourself. Eat the meals that you plan to eat consciously, and work from your meal plan. That alone will save you money. It'll save you money and it will save you time. But there's a science to being in the grocery store too. when you think of how they're laid out, the perimeter of the grocery store is usually the closest to whole food and to nature that you can get. You're in the produce section, you're in the bakery, you're in the deli, you're in the meat section, you're in the frozen food section, and you're in the dairy section. The vast majority of your items should come from the outer walls of the store. The further into the aisles you go, you know, the more you're getting into paying for packaging and paying for processing and paying for chemicals that are in your food. And I never want to jump up on a soapbox and pretend that I'm against all of that stuff. I'm a realist. I think it's inevitable that we get that stuff in us. I know there are people out there and people who follow me on this who are 100% whole food or 100% vegan who really, you know, have a depth of knowledge about the food industry and about the retail industry that they're able to navigate that. That is a learning process for most people, and maybe I'm in the early stages of that and maybe I'll get there someday, but I think for most of us who are just trying to feed our families and not have it cost us an arm and a leg, it's inevitable. You know, you're going to buy some of that stuff, and you need to figure out how you know, right? So they always say read the label. I kind of have one rule before that, and that rule is buy stuff without a label. If you're buying produce, if you're buying the stuff from the perimeter of the store, that's natural. I mean, there is no label. They don't have to tell you what's in it because it's just one thing. It is what it is, right? Find the simple stuff. And that usually means buying real stuff from the perimeter of the store. Now, when you do venture up those aisles, height matters. Where things get placed on a shelf is a science in the retail industry. The stuff that's between 5.5 feet and 6 feet, everything basically that's going to be at eye level, that is generally the most expensive, most processed, and prettiest packaged stuff. Right? It's made to catch your eye. It's made to remove the length of time it takes you to think about it between seeing it on the shelf and putting it in your cart. They're also convenience foods. They're not foods you look at and think of all the work you have to do to it. They're foods that you look at and say, that's a meal. I could eat that in 2 minutes. So if you want, for example, the soup aisle is a great example. Only for the purpose of the example. I don't actually eat soup with the lap band. But you look at a soup aisle, you have the most processed, you know, highest sodium, highest fat, just normal canned soup like we would have bought in the stores in the 80s. That's just right in front of you, and it's the most expensive soup on the shelf. And then above that, so everything over 6 feet and everything under 5.5 feet, that's where you find your no-name stuff. That's where you find your healthy choice lifestyle stuff. That's where you find your low sodium, low fat choices. All of the stuff that they consider that the average consumer isn't looking for, you know, so we need to seek that stuff out. We make it sound like it's difficult, but often it's just as simple as finding the regular version of it and then looking up or down in the aisle. And the healthy stuff is usually around it, just not convenient. It's not at eye level for a reason. Another tip for grocery stores is the end displays that are always changing, right? So when you show up one day and it's tomato juice because it's on sale, the next time it's bags of cookies because they're on sale. The little end displays at every aisle. Again, it's a retail science. Those are impulse buys. They're put there because people pause at the end of aisles to look down them and see if what they're seeking out is in that aisle. They're made to get your attention. 90% of the time, they're things that are immediate satisfaction, things that you could consume in a moment, because they're counting on you. Those aisles are set up for the people who go to the grocery store hungry, or craving, or snacking, or whatever. Generally, if you're working off a meal plan, what you need is never going to be on the end shelf. And here's how you know that they do it on purpose. Whatever is on the end shelf in a grocery store, it's also on the shelf where it normally is. It is only there to get your attention. It's not there because that's how they've decided to organize the store. They're trying to sell you. They're trying to make you make an impulse buy. And if you're working from a meal plan and you're working from a list, you're not going to fall for it. But there's more to this than just being in the grocery store. So in 2009, the Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation set out to do a study. And they went to 100 communities in this country. And they asked people in those communities to buy basic things. They asked for bread, for whole grain bread. They asked for brown rice. They asked for some ground beef. They asked for cheese. They asked for milk. And let's take a look at how this broke down. In Sydney, milk is $2 above the national average. Cheese is almost $1.80 cheaper. Whole wheat pasta is, more than $1.40 cheaper. Brown rice is 10 cents cheaper. Potatoes are about 24 cents more. Apples are 6 cents more. In general,
things aren't that expensive compared to the national average. Take a look at what's happening in Ontario. In Timmins, Ontario, their milk is cheaper, their cheese is cheaper, their grains are a little more expensive. In North Bay, pretty much the same situation. Milk is cheaper, cheese is almost half price. It makes you wonder what's going on. And as you go across the country, you see these trends. In Edmonton, for example, milk is cheaper, cheese is basically on spec, but grains and rice, they're all more expensive than the national average. Things like meat are a little bit cheaper, $7.67, still above the national average, even though you're in Edmonton, where we think of Alberta as being kind of the beef capital of Canada. And then you compare that to what's going on up north in the Yukon, and you can see that just about everything is above the national average, and that's because of transportation, we're told. Coming back down and looking at our region for a moment, there are a couple of things you can notice when you even just look inside Nova Scotia. So Sydney was the only Cape Breton community that they looked at, but when you look at Bridgewater, when you look at Yarmouth, when you look at Spring Hill, you see that these are very much similar stories, that in the Maritimes, we're not doing so bad. Things don't cost that much. These are the costs of 6 apples. This was an even simpler test they ran in that same study. They just asked people to go out and buy 6 loose apples at the grocery store. So in Sydney it was $3.50. Halifax it was $2.80. Charlottetown was $2.38. Rankin Inlet $7.64. And Grand Prairie $5.24.
So how then does all of this come together and answer the question, is it expensive to eat healthy? I gotta be honest, I think it's just expensive to eat. Any choice you make in the grocery store is costing money, and it's getting more expensive. It's always getting more expensive. But if you take a look at some of the research out there, you'll see that in terms of where in the country things cost the most, us here in Cape Breton, we're doing pretty good. Things could be a lot worse. For those of us who have family away, ask about the price of 4 liters of milk in Fort McMurray, and then wonder what we're complaining about. So I absolutely get why the question's asked. I get that it's expensive. It's really not any more expensive to eat healthy than it is to eat, junk. And here's how I want to illustrate that point. The way the industry has trained us to answer this question for years has been cost per calorie. So you look at a food item, you look at the number of calories that are in it, and you divide that into the cost of the item. So in other words, if you have a chocolate bar that's 200 calories and it costs $2, how much is each calorie costing, right? So each calorie in that scenario costs a penny. We've been told that since a calorie is a measurement of energy, you get more energy from higher calorie food. Higher calorie food will always work out to be cheaper. That might be true, but you have to ask to what end, right? It's not just about the number of calories in it. We all know that the goal for health and for, especially for weight loss, is not to simply go out in search of calories. It's to go out in search of nutrition, to give our body the things it needs to grow, to develop, to change with us as we make these lifestyle changes. And especially, for anyone who's taken on a gym program or is working with a trainer, there's a real science to making sure you're giving your body what it needs to properly recover after a workout, but also make the most of it, right? That you're giving it the protein it needs to build muscle, to build strength, to put you in a position that you're able to do more cardio and stuff like that. So cost per calorie is incredibly misleading. Take a look at this picture. This was released last month by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And on this plate, you see broccoli, you see strawberries, M&Ms, you see chips, and you see whole wheat bread. Now, each of these is 100 calories worth of each item. That's what 100 calories worth of broccoli looks like. That's what 100 calories of strawberries looks like, of M&Ms, of chips, and of whole grain bread. But the question now becomes, what's a serving, right? So the real question when we ask ourselves, how much does food actually cost? It's not a measurement of the calorie, it's a measurement of the serving. And there's a couple ways of doing that. You can do it by the weight of the food for comparison, but I actually think just serving size is the easiest way for us to relate to, because that's what we're thinking when we're walking through a grocery store. So look at that broccoli. That's 100 calories worth of broccoli. That's also 3 servings worth of broccoli. So the average serving of broccoli is only about 30 calories, right? Look at the strawberries. That's 4 servings. That's 100 calories. That breaks down to about 25 calories per serving. So there is no contest. When you compare that stuff to a chocolate bar, it's pretty obvious. You know, the nutrition is there in the cheaper amounts of real food, of fresh food. Where we get thrown is that we generally buy healthy food in quantities as equal to what we buy unhealthy. So we're comparing a bag of apples to a bag of chips. That doesn't work, right? And this is the message we need to get across to everyone who's not even just trying to lose weight, but just wants to live in a healthy way. Portion control is incredibly important, not only for health in terms of what you're consuming, but it means you're buying less. You're buying so much less when you're eating a proper portion. You know, you buy a steak for the barbecue, you know, they got them, I was in the grocery store, they're packaged, you know, $9, beautiful looking steak, easily would have been like would have had to have been a celebration meal or something for me to spend $9 on it. But, you know, it's like, it's one serving. And then you take it home. And I have the scale that I use now, and you weigh something like that. And you realize that, not for me, not because of the lap band, not because I'm on a special diet or anything like that, an actual serving of that is a fourth of the steak as it's packaged. You are buying items that are packaged for consumers. They want you to consume it. It's all about using it up as fast as you can so that you'll buy more, right? It's why they've started individually packaging things. It's because, you know, rather than, why sell me a tub with 40 pieces of cut apple in it when you can sell me 5 packs with 8 in each, right? That way it's only 5 times I go to that tub and I'm out. You know, it's all consumer driven. So don't think of yourself in the grocery store as a consumer. Think of yourself there as a hunter. You know what you're hunting for. You're not going to stop until you get precisely that. You're not going to take home any more than you need, and you're not going to leave any in the store that you need to reach the goals for your week. If you buy what you need, if you make what you buy, you don't throw it away, you actually put it on your plate, you stick to a portion size, I'm telling you, eating healthy actually costs less than eating junk. And I have no reason to lie. You guys asked a lot more questions this week as well. I've written up the answers. You can find those on the blog over at eagle1035.com. Thanks.